Welcome, everyone, to the September 2024 Agenda Review Meeting. I'm Tim Hill, Chair of the Planning Commission. Alongside me is Executive Director Amy Brooks and our legal representative, Tasha Blakeney. And at this time, I'll hand it off to Director Brooks.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to go over what we've been doing as staff since we last met. But first, I'd like to introduce, we have a couple new staff members. We have Jake Beaumier, he's our new assistant planner. Jake will be working, focusing on customer service, development plan review. He'll be helping us with the implementation of the county's new land use and transportation plan and supporting our work on the UDO for the county. So we're really excited to have Jake on board. We also have Melinda Woolert. She is an assistant planner as well. She's also going to be assisting with customer service and working closely with our design review program manager, which is Lindsay Crockett, and assisting with administrative level reviews and assisting our senior level planners with their commission cases. Again, we're super excited to have this increased staff capacity here. Ashley Singer, I don't believe that she is here, but her first day was yesterday, and she is our new addressing and planning specialist. We're really excited to have her on board as well. She comes to us with some experience in addressing, which is somewhat rare. So, and then most recently, she's been working in the nonprofit field. So again, thrilled to have her as well. So staff have completed the facts and figures report, and we finally finished our annual report. Those should be in front of you. We have provided those copies, and there's links on our website. We provided a presentation on the annual report in June, so this is just that print copy for your reference. The facts and figures report is one that we publish annually. It's a descriptive and statistical summary of local, physical, social, cultural, governmental, and economic conditions in the Knoxville area. And I'll just hit briefly on some highlights. So despite the news of gloom regarding our housing market, Knoxville, the metro area cost of living is 86.7, which is well below the national average of 100. Still among the most affordable places to live, based on rankings by U.S. News. Our median household income is $70,000, which is below the U.S. Median of $74,755, but again, we have a lower cost of living. Our top employers remain Clayton, Pilot Flying J, the Department of Energy, Denso Manufacturing, Discovery Communications, Regal Entertainment, and Brunswick Boats. There are many more jobs in Knox County than there are workers, so you'll notice that there's thousands of commuters from surrounding counties that come into Knox County each day to work. We're ranked as one of the best places to live in Tennessee, is ranked by U.S. News. The city of Knoxville's population continues to grow at a rate that we have not seen in the last decade. It hit 198,000 in 2023, and we anticipate that it'll top 200,000 when we get those 2024 figures next spring. Our metro area is just shy of 1,946,000 is where we are. U.S. Today also ranked Knoxville as the second best arts district in the United States. So on page 3 of the report, you'll see a pretty long list of local events. It's quite impressive, and I encourage you to take a look at that. The BREATHE project is moving forward. As a reminder, this is a project to develop a plan for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and other harmful air pollution in our region. We have a public survey open until the end of this month. It's posted on our BREATHE website homepage, and we will be convening working groups starting in October. These working groups will be focused on sectors that include land use, transportation, buildings, energy, agriculture, and forestry. I will send a link out after this meeting, so I encourage you all to take that survey, and please do share it with others in your network. The mobility plan is also gearing up for another round of public input in late October. We don't have those dates set, but once we do, we will share those with you all. So that concludes my report on agency activities for the month. If anybody has any questions or other comments.
This may be for Kim Bumpus rather than you, but what's the process that the U.S. News and World Report uses for cities best to live in? I know what it is for higher ed, but do you know, like?
I'd have to find out and get that back to you on that.
Yeah, just curious.
Anybody else? Okay, so now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. We have Kimberly Pettigrew. She is the Director of Food Systems from United Way. She serves is a staff support as well for the Knox County Food Policy Council. She has over 2 decades of experience in food systems, including a background in nutrition, journalism, and local food systems. She uses her background in applied community development to work with the broad community, individuals experiencing food insecurity, marginalized populations, nonprofits, businesses, and government leadership to create a more just, equitable food system rooted in the community. She also provides mentorship and support for up-and-coming food system leaders and organizations. And today she'll be sharing with you all an overview of the planning process and findings of the People's Food Plan. You'll want to hit there's a little person on your mic right there in front of you.
Thanks, Jesse. Is that better? Yes. So you got a lovely introduction of Kimberly. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Madeline Howe. I'm a program manager at the Knox County Health Department, and I worked with Kimberly on the Community Food Security Assessment and now the People's Food Plan. So we're here today to share a little bit more about that project. So I'll start and then I'll pass over to Kimberly. So this is just a brief overview of what our Community Food Security Assessment looked like. It included stakeholder interviews, a community-wide survey, and we partnered with community-based organizations and an advisory committee to do the interviews and the survey. These are members of our core team. So Kimberly and I, along with Erin Rose and Michaela Morancic from 3 Cubed, and then 2 community members, Jinx McEwen and Jasmine Bryant, served as the core team. So we guided the assessment and the committee throughout the process, developing the survey and really working on keeping the focus of the assessment on the community's needs. These are the community-based organizations that we partnered with. Our partners included Women with Vision, Rooted East, Learn, Play, Sign, Knox Pride, Centro Hispano, and Real Good Kitchen, the YWCA, and then 2 change makers, Jinx, who I mentioned before, and Carlos Penn. And to keep our committee aligned and really focused on the goal of the assessment, we used collective governance to make sure that we were honoring the collective wisdom of the community, establishing expectations and operations from the very beginning so that we all stayed on the same page throughout the process. We also created meeting agreements. We had quarterly committee meetings, so these meeting agreements really helped us keep the committee on track and made sure that we were also, as a core team, being held responsible for the work that we were to be doing. And then we used consensus building strategies to guide our work throughout the process. And so briefly, to look at our assessment, our survey reached over 770 individuals in Knox County. We surveyed youth, so people aged 16 to 24, partnering with Knox Pride and Seed to do that. And then we also surveyed adults using the automated phone surveys through UT Care. We worked with KCDC and then several of our community partners to survey people directly in the community. And you'll see the breakdown on that graph that shows how many surveys were collected by each. And so one of the main parts of our assessment was really trying to not just collect data, but also learn about how the community really felt about food insecurity, and the food environment in which they lived. And so we wanted to not only get quantitative data, but also qualitative data. So we asked a lot of open-ended questions throughout the assessment to get people's responses and really see what they had to say about the issues that they were facing in their community. So we asked every survey participant what food insecurity meant to them. This is just a sample of the responses that we got. I think we had over 740 people actually answer this question. So it was a lot of data for our partners at 3 Cubed to sort through and code. But it came out with some great responses by the end. And so then we took that definition that people gave us, what food insecurity meant to them, and in the assessment, we also used the USDA screener for food insecurity, and we compared whether or not they self-defined as food insecure to whether or not they actually screened food insecure using the food screener from the USDA. And so you'll see that a pretty large percentage of people who did screen as food insecure don't see themselves as food insecure when thinking about how they define it. And there were a lot of different kind of assumptions made about that, whether it's that they think that there are people having a harder time than them, or that they have what they need, so they don't see themselves as food insecure, even if maybe they do sometimes struggle purchasing food, or would be defined as food insecure by some of the screeners that we use. And then we disaggregated that even more and broke it down by specific demographic groups. So we looked at it across racial and ethnic groups, across groups that identified as LGBTQIA+, people who lived below the poverty line, single parents or caregivers of children, people who were renting, or people who were 26 and under or older than 65. And you'll see, depending on the group, sometimes they self-defined themselves as having low food insecurity, more so than what the USDA said, and then sometimes it was the USDA screener was higher than what they self-identified as. And then by the end of the survey, and after doing all the data collection, we found that there were specific things that increased the odds of being food insecure within our community. So people who identified as not owning a home, so either renting or another housing situation, were 2 times more likely to be food insecure. If they had a longer walk to the grocery store, so over 30 minutes versus less than 10 minutes, they were 3 times higher. And then poverty was the one with the largest increased odds of being food insecure. So people who were identified as being under the poverty level had an 8 times higher likelihood of being food insecure. And then one of the last questions that we asked, and this really plays into the next part of the presentation that Kimberly will be talking about today, we wanted to know what people's ideas were for reducing hunger in our community. So we asked another open-ended question, and then coded it based on similar responses. And so you'll see here people's responses to that question of how do you reduce hunger in your community. The most answer, or the top answer, was feeding people. So providing more accessible food, better hours at food pantries, increasing access to affordable food. There was policy included in this, better access like walking and biking or getting to the farmers markets. And so this question and a lot of the things that came from that really helped us feed into the next planning portion that led us to this People's Food Plan that Kimberly will now share about.
Yes, so we were lucky that we were able to carry forward the plan being co-created by people experiencing food insecurity at higher levels from the groups that you also saw before. We actually convened at the Knoxville Botanical Gardens. We had more than 60 stakeholders, and we did something really different for a strategic plan, so apologies to all the planners in the room. What we did is we actually used a visioning exercise. So we did collage, we drew pictures, we used words, and we really wanted to reimagine what our food system could look like in the future in order to understand what we could do today. We worked with Ashley Mays, who is an artist and has her master's degree, so she coded these images just like you would a research project. We had a lot of things that were repeating despite people feeling maybe a little uncomfortable that they weren't doing something they were used to. There were a lot of farms, there were a lot of different types of people. There was obviously a lot of food in our future, which was exciting, but there were things that were less expected. So there were a lot of hands, not bodies, just hands. A lot of people cut out hands. A lot of people also cut out fish, which if you're like us, we had a lot of questions. We don't live near the coast, but we realized that some of the parables that people carry with them, like the loaves and the fishes or teaching a man to fish, were things that people really saw as solutions for a food system in the future of Knox County. So we use those to really define our outcomes. I'm not going to mention those here, but they are in your planning or your guide here. And so the outcomes that we selected were right to access, abundance, economic inclusion, creating capabilities, and collective shared power. That is on page 13. These are really different. As you can see, they actually don't mention food specifically. We learned that community in this assessment was really more than about just food, and so we took a community approach about where people live, work, and play. And so once again, moving from our outcomes, we created our strategic plan, and this is it. I recognize, once again, that this is very different. My background is in applied community development, so really what we need to get right with this system is how we work together, how we collaborate, and how we create shared values and vision. We really are solutions-oriented as a group, and so we wanted to create something highly visual to be able to take back to community members who may not be able to understand a typical plan. We are building a monitoring and evaluation plan for people who are into numbers and data and want to see that we'll be able to share in future years. But as you can see, each of the outcomes is represented. We have it in English and Spanish, and it's a bit like Where's Waldo? There's actually American Sign Language represented here. We have homeless individuals and the Black community members specifically with some of our artwork. And then we also have things like a gold leaf. So you can see it a bit here. I also have some printed copies. The gold leaf is based on a Japanese pottery technique called kintsugi. So when pottery breaks, we actually put it back together with gold, and we're stronger because of our brokenness. So sometimes our community experiences things that, makes us on different sides of the spectrum, and we really just wanted to ensure that we could move forward together, and we feel like we're actually stronger because of our differences and because some of the things that have happened to us in the past or in the future. So moving from our plan, we really did want to use this space in our time coming together to talk about action. And so we did develop some very high-level strategies that were rooted in the things that Madeline shared that were lifted up by community, including policy change. It's hard to tell, but some of the words are actually in orange. That means that we are currently doing these things. Things in blue would be things that we are working on or building or in a pilot stage. So for systems change or policy, we have been implementing a food pantry bill of rights for our food pantries. We had a lot of information that people wanted to see food pantry reform. They wanted to be treated with dignity, respect. They wanted to be given choices for their allergies or their cultural food preferences. And so Second Harvest has been working on that with the group. United Way, along with Real Good Kitchen and KCDC, also received a healthy food financing grant. That's exciting for planning purposes because it increases access to food using a fund model. So we'd really be focusing on entrepreneurship here. Growing a self-reliant food system, we will have data dashboards, but we're also working a lot with community gardens. Anybody guess how many community gardens we have? Great, nobody knew until last year, more than 50. And so United Way is actually leading our second annual community garden assessment this year. We're talking about teaching people how to measure how much land they have growing food. They want to learn how to measure how much produce they're growing. And then we have groups like refugees that are looking for 6 to 7 acres of property to be able to grow more food. Cultivating pathways for education, skill building, and communication, this comes back to the fish, right? So people really do want to learn how to better themselves, not just for food, but for budgeting, other types of things. And so creating capabilities is a big part of the plan. Madeline's already talked a lot about the culture that we're creating of bringing people who are experiencing food insecurity alongside stakeholders or providing solutions. And so you'll continue to see more of that from the work from this group over the next year. And then once again, we really wanted to asset frame this language. So we saw a lot of people who had a lot of strong feelings about their experience receiving emergency food and other supports. And so we wanted to reframe that and talk about how we can reimagine how we feed people, right? We are an amazing group of people here in Knox County and have a lot of tools and amazing assets, and it's really how we come together to use those. Some of the things we've already been working on are community refrigerators. That includes the American Heart Association, the Knox County Health Department, because it's really hard to eat healthy foods if they're not refrigerated. We are working on, once again, some pantry models like Shop with Dignity, and then hot and ready-made meals. We learned that a barrier to healthy eating was not access to produce for everyone, it was actually time. I know many of us who even have enough money to buy what we want still choose convenience, and so we're working with Real Good Kitchen and other providers to really assess how we can do more ready-made meals. That felt like a sprint. I did want to let you all know that we spoke a lot about food security today, but the assessment really was around community food insecurity. So we have a lot of data around social connectedness, transportation, people's living memory about if they even had a time when their community was rich in food resources. We have the CDC's mental health screener, Healthy Days. And so we're able to connect the dots around food and its greater impact on people's lives. We do have an Esri hub for people who, once again, are data folks. We've worked with UT to build that, and we're finalizing it right now. It'll have some heat maps, so you can actually see zip codes where people responded to things like, we want more community gardens, or we want to participate in things around waste and recovery. And so we'll share that with the planning staff once it's done, and you guys will have full access to that. We're happy to answer any questions. We probably are limited on time today, but feel free to get our contact information from one of the team.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Kimberly. Does anybody have any questions before they? Go ahead.
Maybe they covered this and I just didn't hear it clearly. And it talks about Knox County, the communities in Knox County. And were there some organizations that were more geared toward the elderly and the disabled elderly or shut-ins, and then maybe some of the rural areas of the Appalachian, what I call East Knox County?
Yeah, so we worked a lot with CAC. Their mobile meals program, Judith Pilo, has been a long-term participant in food policy and also participated in this process. So we were able to work with them to get a lot more of that information, not only from stakeholder perspective, but to ensure some of our surveys went out that direction. We partnered with KCDC specifically to serve some of the senior and disabled towers. So all of the KCDC surveys, I believe there were just over 50 of them, would have come from that group. The final thing that we did around disability communities specifically is that we worked with Learn, Play, Sign and did an event that was entirely in American Sign Language and was also translated to people like myself who don't speak American Sign Language that may experience disabilities. And so that was a really amazing opportunity to bring people together and to actually celebrate that. As far as rural counties, we targeted zip codes that were prioritized by the Knox County Health Department and UT Medical Center based on some of those healthy community data. And so there were few zip codes that were in the county that overlapped with that. I believe the 37920 zip code would probably have been the more extensive one. We started that process 2 years ago, so things may have changed, but we'd be happy to, provide you specific data for any zip code that you'd be willing, that you're looking for, if we have survey respondents from that area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Midas?
Yeah, hi. I was going to ask you, so as planning commissioners, we're responsible for approving rezonings. We look at subdivision plans. We can often ask suggestions to developers when they're doing developments. Can you give us like one or two takeaways that would be the most important thing to keep in mind when we're reviewing these plans or proposals from developers or residents in Knoxville and Knox County?
I think I defer a lot to your planning staff to make sure we answer that correctly. But I think that what we're really interested in is ensuring that the solutions that our community thinks are important are represented in the work that we're doing. And so one of the things that we, like I mentioned, have is the Healthy Food Financing Grant. So we'll be targeting areas that are low income, low access, or food deserts to encourage healthy food retail in those spaces. So I think really as commissioners, what you guys can do is just connect people to groups like Food Policy Council or this work, because a lot of times we have some tools and solutions within the nonprofit and public health network that we can help leverage their development. And so I'd say really just like focusing on connections to those assets would be a big thing. The other thing is the Food Policy Council. We are Knoxville's Food Policy Council too, and we've been in existence for 43 years. We're the nation's oldest food policy council, and we were created by planning. And so we always have the opportunity to work with staff like Jesse to kind of share some information and get feedback from the council as much as possible.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that was an exceptional presentation, and I thoroughly appreciate the alternative paths that you took to really get information from folks in a different way and present it in a different way. It's just really exceptional. So thank you very much.
Thanks. I know that people have a lot of limitations, including food policy, about how we're able to bring people into the work. And so both United Way and the Health Department are always able to offer some of that assistance. And so thank you guys for allowing us to do things like meeting in a box and stuff for some of the planning things that are happening. We love to participate in those and really bring as much community as we can from the food systems perspective. So
And I just had one quick question. I know you're wrapping up. Just, did you say 6 acres? Was that the minimum, or was that an ideal size for?
Yes. So the refugees are working a lot with Beardsley Farm right now. We have been piecing them properties together. They're actually using a portion of Knoxville College right now and some of that land while they're being displaced for the redevelopment of Western Heights. And so, yes, I've been told that the refugees are really seeking about 6 to 7 acres of property, ideally within Knox County, I think is what they've communicated to Jesse and I, but we're really hoping that, even if we're able to find pieces of property that connect or that are disconnected, that they'd still be beneficial.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you both again. Okay, we'll go ahead and get into our review of agenda items. While Michelle's switching computers here. So the first item is number 55. It's an ordinance amendment. This is just a minor amendment to the definition of industrial craft in the city ordinance.
Thank you, Amy. So this came about because of a recent rezoning case. You might remember it was 7C24RZ that you guys heard in August. You guys voted for a postponement to allow the applicant to work with us and the city's plans review and inspection department to see if an alternative path could be pursued that did not include rezoning this property to an industrial zone. So we looked at adding some information to the industrial craft definition. So right now, it currently reads artisan-related crafts and industrial processes that are more intensive uses, such as small-scale metalworking, glass blowing, furniture making, and small-scale food production that includes preparation, processing, canning, or packaging of food products. And we felt like a contractor or tradesperson business was fairly in line with all of that. So we added that and then provided some examples. So it's building, mechanical, electrical, painting, and plumbing professionals. That list is not intended to be all-inclusive, so it says such as, because if there's something that's similar to that, then the plans review and inspections department could allow them to go forward using this definition if it fits within the general idea of this definition. We also added a few showrooms and points of sale to kind of, flesh out that that's not just an office, but it could include these other additional secondary type of things within that business operations. And then, of course, microbreweries, microdistilleries, microwineries, we left that in there. So this was something that we added to the industrial craft definition that would allow the applicant from 7C24RZ to pursue an alternative path. So they could do maybe a minor extension of the CG zone instead, which allows industrial craft uses as a permissible use rather than rezoning the property to an industrial mixed-use zone. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Super fast, Michelle, just to make sure that there's coverage for if someone was to read that and want to have that front of office, but then have a back of office that was a big car lot or something like that. Does this address that they would not be allowed to have like a massive car storage area or?
Yeah, but I think because it's not included within the normal operations of anything that's described here, I think you could make the assumption that it would not be allowed. This doesn't state anything about cars or car storage or outdoor storage being allowed. And in fact, it keeps it to showrooms and points of sale. It says light assembly unrelated to manufacturing could occur. So the intent is to keep that small-scale business oriented. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, now we'll turn it over to Jesse for the next three. The first one is agenda item number 10. This is a request for up to 6 dwelling units per acre, and a number of residents have expressed concern over the impacts that this development might have on Carnes Valley Road.
Okay, yes, so this is a request to rezone a 20.5 acre property at 8920 Carnes Valley Drive from agricultural to planned residential with a maximum density of 6 dwelling units an acre. This property is located on both sides of Carnes Valley Drive, which becomes West Emory Road to the east, and access to Oak Ridge Highway is nearby to the southwest. You can see that the Carnes Valley Elementary, Middle, and High School are all within a short driving distance, and this property is next to the Knox County Sports Park. And Beaver Creek forms the southern and southeastern border of this lot, and it's near a kayak launch from that sports park. This property is adjacent to agricultural lots to the west and then several PR zone subdivisions to the east with maximum densities ranging from 3 to 5 dwelling units an acre. The place type for this property is mostly suburban mixed residential. And then on the north side of Carnes Valley Drive, there's the traditional neighborhood place type. Both place types are intended for detached and attached housing forms, and they both permit consideration of PR zoning up to 12 dwelling units an acre. There is stream protection along Beaver Creek and a bit of hillside protection along the southern edge as well. In the existing land use map, you can see that there is diversity in the housing stock here, including single-family subdivisions and townhouse condominiums. And then in the aerial view, you can see the recreational amenities of the neighboring park, which was completed in 2010. It surrounds the Carnes Senior Center and includes 5 baseball fields, 3 football fields, a playground, a walking trail, a pavilion, and like I said, that kayak launch pad. And you can also see the rural character of the area, along with the active construction of suburban residential expansion here. On the subject property, there is mature tree canopy along the bank of Beaver Creek, which does include steep slopes as well. The recently adopted growth policy plan expanded the planned growth area here to include the subject property, as well as other properties around this section of Carnes Valley Drive, which was constructed in 2003. We're recommending approval of the request with a condition that existing tree canopy along Beaver Creek and the steep slopes be preserved. Changing conditions supporting this request include the extension of Carnes Valley Drive to the south in 2017, which improves connectivity to Hardin Valley Road to the south. You can see before and after images in the bottom right-hand corner there. This request is a minor extension of PR zoning at a compatible density with what exists, and this close proximity to a major park is an asset for residents. The condition to maintain existing tree canopy is intended to preserve some of the view shed and natural assets of the area, especially in light of Beaver Creek being designated as a navigable water trail. This condition also complements that kayak launch, and it's consistent with Policy 7 of the Comprehensive Plan to encourage development that conserves and connects natural features and habitat. This case is controversial among neighboring residents who are primarily concerned about traffic impacts, but also have concerns about flooding, school capacity, and the scenic beauty of the area. A traffic impact study would be required if the maximum density was pursued, and roadway improvements may be coordinated with engineering and public works at the design review stage. The tree preservation conditions do address some of the stormwater and rural character concerns. And then with regards to school impact, we do coordinate with school districts on a monthly basis and provide a summary of land use decisions that may impact school enrollment. So they're aware. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jesse. Question 1 is, can you describe, I guess, that very long strip that runs on the opposite side? It just looks so peculiar on this. Can you describe it a bit so we might understand how that could potentially be incorporated into the development?
Yeah, so I think what happened here is that this property was all together at one point, and then in 2003, when Carnes Valley Drive was created here, it split the property. And you can see that in the ownership record. There is, a long drive of access to a street to the north. And, potentially there could be a development on the north side of Carnes Valley Drive. But obviously, most of the development potential would be on the southern side.
Next question is about, because a lot of the comments have been about the road and the infrastructure there. And if I followed you correctly, like, there's really nothing to be said about road improvements at this point. There's nothing planned, but that could be addressed at a design review stage if this was to be rezoned.
Yes, my understanding is that there is nothing slated at this point in this immediate area. There have been improvements not too long ago, like the extension and the connectivity south in 2017. A traffic impact study would be required at the development plan stage, and that could lead to conditions and memorandums of understanding with the developer and the county regarding potential improvements for safety.
Last question is about current connectivity between this parcel and the park that is referred to a good bit in the case file. Right now, the only way to get from said parcel to the park is via a car, right? There's not any other method of moving between those places.
Yeah, it's very close, but it's not adjacent. Let's see if you can kind of see the color distinction there. There's a property in between. Unless you took a kayak, then you could get there.
Okay, thanks.
See no other questions? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 12.
This request is to rezone a 4.8 acre property to PR up to 24 dwelling units an acre. The property is on Beaver Creek Drive, which is a major collector street near the intersection with Clinton Highway to the southwest. There's also access to Powell Drive and Powell High School via Brickyard Road to the northeast. In the zoning layer, you can see that the property is immediately surrounded by agricultural zoning, but there is a wide range of zoning in close proximity. There's PR zoning up to 12 dwelling units an acre, a couple lots to the northeast. There is also CA, OB, and CB zoning nearby, which all permit residential development up to 12 dwelling units per acre by right. The place type for this parcel is traditional neighborhood, which is intended to provide a mix of housing ranging from single family to townhouse to small multifamily buildings. The maximum PR density that can be considered is 24 dwelling units an acre. In the aerial view, you can see that the immediate area is somewhat rural, but there is a developed commercial corridor along Clinton Highway to the south. You can also see roadway improvements. Let me get my laser pointer. You can see roadway improvements here. There was a roundabout that was installed recently, and that's where it intersects with Brickyard Road and Lingate Boulevard, and that improvement provides safer and more efficient access to the major arterial street of Powell Drive to the north. Another capital improvement to consider is at the intersection of West Beaver Creek Drive and Clinton Highway. Right-of-way is being acquired by Knox County, and construction is estimated to begin in late 2025. The county and TDOT will install a traffic signal and make roadway alignment changes to greatly increase safety at this location. A traffic signal will allow for safer turning movements to and from West Beaver Creek Drive onto Clinton Highway. And West Beaver Creek Drive is also being shifted to the west in order to improve sight distance as Clinton Highway curves towards the south near this intersection. So staff are recommending approval of PR zoning with a density no greater than 12 dwelling units per acre rather than 24. This is more compatible with surrounding zoning, which has an equivalent permitted density. This rezoning is supported by changing conditions in the area specific to transportation improvements and residential amenities, which include the commercial corridor along Clinton Highway and its close proximity to Powell High School. The recommended condition limits development to 24 building permits before the improvements are completed at Clinton Highway. And this is equivalent to a density of 5 dwelling units per acre. This is a condition like this is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan's Policy 9 to coordinate infrastructure improvements with development. And I'm happy to answer any questions on this one. Oh, I will add that the applicant, we haven't discussed the condition about building permit restrictions until the completion of roadway improvements, but they were accepting of the 12 dwelling units per acre density.
See no questions. We will move on to agenda item number 37. Jesse?
This request is to rezone 1916 Fenwood Drive from RN1 to RN2. This property is in Fountain City, west of North Broadway, and it's accessible by several narrow residential streets. In the zoning layer, you can see that this lot abuts RN1 zoning, as well as a 154-acre area of EN, or established neighborhood zoning. This EN zoning was granted in 2008 in response to petitions from property owners there, and it's designed to provide stability to older, large lot neighborhoods by preserving the existing character and development pattern through design guidelines. There is some RN2 zoning further north and to the east, and there's an outlier of RN5 zoning, which reflects the multifamily development constructed in the 90s. The institutional zoning to the south is a private religious school. The property does have significant hillside protection overlay zoning, which would be retained, and you can see there is a stream running through the property as well. The land use plans show that this is in the center of a predominantly low-density residential area, and the LDR land use does permit consideration of RN2 zoning. The existing land use map reflects that this is a mostly single-family residential neighborhood, though there are a couple duplexes across Fenwood Drive from the subject property. In the aerial view, you can see that this property is part of a wooded streambed corridor that connects to the undisturbed forest range along Black Oak Ridge to the northwest. So staff are recommending denial of RN2 zoning because it does not meet the criteria for a rezoning. There have been no significant changes to this area in decades. This can be attributed in part to the deliberate decision by neighbors to obtain the EN zone to preserve residential character. While the permitted uses between RN1 and RN2 are identical, this rezoning would double the number of single-family dwellings that could be considered on a property which has significant topographical and flood-prone challenges. This rezoning would conflict with the general plan's development policies that serve to protect water resources and natural drainage systems. And lastly, this property is accessed by winding, narrow residential streets deep in the center of the neighborhood that could be negatively impacted by more residential intensity than what is already permitted. A couple extra notes. The applicant posted a comment today that explaining the reason they're requesting RN2 zoning. They shared a plan showing a few lots that would be proposed and state that the smaller lot size permitted in RN2 is what they're seeking so that they have less impact on the forest and floodplain. It's worth noting that lot dimensions do not necessitate clearing and grading, and both districts would permit the same minimum building footprint if that's the intention. It is important to consider all potential uses with a rezoning, which could be much more intensive than what the applicant shared. If the intent is to conserve the natural features of the property, a more impactful approach would be a conservation easement or a declaration of covenants regarding disturbance of future subdivided lots, not a more intensive rezoning. Fountain City Town Hall also posted a comment today, a letter of support for the staff recommendation on this case. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, it's not about this one. I have a question about item number 35 and didn't know if you want to just address it at the end or now.
We can address
Jesse,
it
I just
then.
wanted to ask, if the applicant came with a conservation easement and then identifying the part, would it change the way staff looked at it if the predominant part of this land would be in a conservation easement?
So I did discuss those different options with the applicant, and they maintained their request. So we discussed the option of potentially a partial rezoning of, specific areas. Also, I shared some resources on how to set up a conservation easement. So that was part of the discussion, and this is where we are.
But had they come forward with a conservation easement and just partially, would you all look at that kind of in a fresh new way?
We'd have to discuss it as a team. I think part of the concern is certainly that this is an environmentally sensitive lot, and a more intensive zoning and upzoning didn't seem appropriate in that context.
Thank you.
I've got a quick question on the follow-up on that. In talking with the applicant, did they tell you which road they were going to access it from?
I believe it was going to be Fenwood, but also Montrose to the southeast.
Right, I guess, similar to Chairman Hill, I mean, if there was a way to restrict access from Hamlet and Westchester, because that's where, it would get into trouble with the hillside. But if they just stayed away from the hillside and came in from, the other road, I don't see as much of an issue with it. But it would be problematic trying to access it from the upper port on Hamlet and Westchester, I could see, but just a comment.
Okay, I was just going to add, the only way to do that would be to, what Jesse had noted is looking at a partial rezoning, because there's no conditioning of zoning in the city. Okay, if we can stay with Ms. Hillman. Commissioner Midas, did you have a question about number 35? Okay, if you want to go ahead and.
Can you kind of go over your approval and how you came to that? I guess my concern in looking at the lot is just the amount of hillside protection in that area and the fact that those lots have already been developed. Where do you see potential development happening in these lots? And how would getting this R2 be able to help with their plans in the future to do? I assume they want to do some more development in those lots.
Yeah, let me just pull up that case for everyone. So, yes, this is 10 contiguous lots, many of which have been recently developed. The part of the basis for RN2 zoning here is that there has been some significant development. This is a fairly recent multifamily development here that's really helped to activate this space. There's better pedestrian connectivity to support more residential development, and there is this, commercial corridor down here, which also along Sutherland Avenue, that provides a lot of service-based assets for residential development. You're correct that this is a steep sloped area with hillside protection. What's interesting is that, some of the exemptions for hillside protection are that if it's an existing lot of record, preceding the recode, and it's a single-family lot of record, then it's exempt from the hillside protection overlay. One of the key properties here that has undisturbed hillside is right here, and if it were to be subdivided, it would no longer be exempt from hillside protection, so kind of ironically, hillside protection would actually kick in and be considered in a circumstance where it wouldn't otherwise have been. So I don't think it compromises the hillside protection overlay. It actually activates it potentially. And then just considering the existing development pattern here and the fact that there is extensive RN2 zoning in this neighborhood and its access along Hollywood, for those reasons, we determined that RN2 zoning was appropriate at this location.
Okay, so some of those houses are brand new.
Yes.
So if someone's wanting to do something with that, would it not entail them having to remove what houses are there and rebuild? Unless and if they subdivide, like you said, they would have to use hillside protection, and it would probably not allow them to do any kind of development because it's so steep. Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, well, we try not to have detailed conversations with applicants about their development intention, but you would assume with lots of these sites that there'd be some kind of merging of lots or subdividing of lots that they're seeking through RN2. I don't think these houses that have been built would be demolished because the applicant is the developer of those houses.
And you don't know why he's seeking this rezoning?
I'm assuming it's so that some of these lots can be that the lot lines can be changed in some way to allow for more residential development.
If I could comment on that, because I had a similar thought, and because about these being new houses, RN2 doesn't allow for townhouses or multifamily, so I think the only reasonable rationale for that is to be able to re-subdivide to where the houses that are built are on smaller lots, and then new houses can be built on the rest of the property. That would be my guess.
But they would need to have a new road to access that because, I mean, most of those houses are closer to Hollywood. And is that right? I mean, and would they not need to cut a new road from Apex to access the backside of those lots?
I think because of topography, that would be really challenging. I would, potentially there would be driveway access from Hollywood, but then there has been some recent addressing changes like this one, and potentially there would be access here and then access from Hollywood as well. I'm not. But yes, I think some sort of subdividing is probably in the intent since the uses are all the same. It's just different dimensional standards between the districts.
And if it's subdivided, then the hillside protection is at play. And
At least for the highlighted parcels, some of these have been previously disturbed, but this one has not. And currently it's exempt as a single-family lot of record preceding the code. If it were subdivided, it would no longer be exempt, and a slope analysis would be conducted.
And you said some of them already have been disturbed, so the hillside protection is in play there or not?
If they've been fully previously disturbed, they're considered exempt. But the highlighted one is not one of those.
And what's that? There's a darker line that's towards I-40. What is that?
A darker line?
Yeah, before the last lot, there was like a darker line.
Oh, it's just, I think it's,
Yeah, that.
yeah, potentially a closed alley, or a closed, let's see if we have yeah, it's just like a right-of-way. It's something that would probably get cleaned up with new plating.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Now we'll move on to agenda item number 19. So we changed computers here. This will be Kelsey's case. Staff is recommending a different density than what was requested, and there have been a number of public comments that have been submitted.
All right, this is a request to rezone a 2.12 acre parcel located on the north side of Solway Road, east of George Light Road, from planned residential with up to 3 dwelling units an acre, agricultural, technology overlay, and floodway to planned residential with up to 2 dwelling units an acre, with the TO and floodway zones retained. Staff has amended their recommendation to an alternative density of 1.5 dwelling units an acre. The surrounding area is predominantly residential in nature with undeveloped forested land and agricultural land nearby. Development in the area has gradually shifted from undeveloped agricultural lands to residential uses since 2003. The trend in significant development began with a 63-lot subdivision constructed 934 feet north of the subject property in 2004. Since then, 4 additional single-family subdivisions have been built within 0.31 miles of the subject property. Nearby amenities include Solway Park, which is 50 feet to the west of the subject property, and Beaver Creek, which runs along the eastern lot line of the property. The planned residential zone is intended to encourage more imaginative solutions to environmental design problems. According to the slope analysis, the subject property is situated on a steep incline abutting Beaver Creek, with 25 to 40% slopes and above 40% ranges. The property is also partially in a FEMA floodway and 100 and 500-year floodplains. Floodway protections are meant to mitigate the impacts of development on the waterways, and any proposed site plans will be required to comply with the Knox County Stormwater Ordinance. We received pointed comments regarding the access to the subject property once developed. Presently, access is via George Light Road, a minor collector street with an 18-foot pavement width within a 47-foot right-of-way. Before permitting can begin, the subject property must undergo a public review process and obtain Planning Commission approval by submitting a development plan, which includes reviewing roadway access. The plan will be reviewed to determine whether the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding community. The place types for the subject property are suburban residential, hillside protection, and stream protection. Under the SR place type, the PR zone allows up to 1.5 units per acre and is considered a partially related zone. Per Appendix H of the comprehensive plan, a partially related zone must satisfy additional criteria for approval. This property meets criteria too that the zoning district be compatible with the current zoning of adjacent sites, which includes low-density residential zones such as RA low-density residential and PR up to 3 dwelling units an acre. The rezoning complies with the Comprehensive Plan's Implementation Policy 2 to ensure that new development is sensitive to the existing community character. The lot sizes and uses allowed by the PR zone at a density of 1.5 dwelling units an acre are consistent with other residential developments in the area. Staff has amended the recommendation to a density of 1.5 dwelling units an acre due to the environmentally sensitive nature of the site and its proximity to Beaver Creek. The 1.5 dwelling units an acre density could yield a maximum of 3 lots, whereas the requested 2 dwelling units an acre could yield a maximum of 4 lots. The alternative recommended density is still consistent with the surrounding area, which consists of single-family dwellings and planned residential zones varying from 1 to 4 dwelling units an acre. We have spoken with the applicant, and they are amenable to the alternative density. At the September 9th meeting, the TTCDA board issued a certificate of appropriateness recommending staff's recommendation to approve the PR zone at 1.5 dwelling units an acre with the TO and F zones retained. Are there any questions?
Did you say you had proposed the new density to the applicant and they were okay with it?
Yes.
Is that what I heard? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next 4 cases will be Ms. Warner's. We'll start with 16. This is 9M24RZ. Staff is recommending denial of the change in zoning. due to a lack and change of conditions. I got ahead. Number 8. This is also denial.
This is a rezoning from agricultural to RA low-density residential. This proposal is on the south side of Daybreak Drive, northeast of Middlebrook Pike. It's .98 acres. The application was postponed last month and revised from RB to RA. There have been some A to RA and PR rezonings at densities of 1 to 5 dwelling units an acre in the area. The general trend along the south side of Daybreak Drive consists of small and medium-sized lots and single-family detached residential houses, while large agricultural tracts remain on the north side because of the steep slopes. The adjacent property to the southwest was recently rezoned to PR with up to 5 dwelling units an acre and then up to 12 dwelling units an acre. However, the parcel is accessed off of Ballcamp Pike, a minor arterial. The Shod Road extension is nearly complete. The 4-lane median divided section will have sidewalks on both sides and access to the elementary school, the community parks. And the corridor also opens up the opportunity for commercial development. The RA zone provides for residential areas with low population densities. Single-family homes are permitted, while duplexes and garage apartments require a use on review. So this roughly 42,000 square foot site has an existing home, 2 additional single-family homes, or 1 duplex could be built under the RA zone. This property has exclusive access to Daybreak Drive, which is a 16-foot wide road, while the additional 1 to 2 lots would not require road improvements. We're concerned a rezoning would create a ripple effect of other rezonings on this road. Additional rezonings would bring more traffic to a subpar road. There are no plans in place to improve Daybreak Drive at this time. And this property also has some steep slopes along the front within the hillside protection area. The RA zone is directly related to the suburban mixed-use place type, meaning the allowed uses in RA are compatible with the place type. The RA zone is compatible with the single-family homes in the area. Even though the low density is compatible with the area, the incremental increases in development are not appropriate for this street. The rezonings are not consistent with the comprehensive plan to focus growth in areas already served by adequate infrastructure and improving development where infrastructure is not adequate yet. So the recommendation is to deny because it's not consistent with the comp plan or the implementation policies. Are there any questions?
I have a question. I feel like I'm missing something. And I heard everything you just said, but I still feel like I'm missing something. Because there are properties so close by that have, significant density. And this seems like a small parcel. So I'm just confused.
Commissioner, which properties are you referring to? Are you referring to the 1 to 5, just to the north there?
If I'm seeing the map correctly, the parcel in question touches
This one?
this one, which hasn't been developed, but it has been zoned.
The one on Shod Road?
Yes.
That's because it has access on Shod Road. I think our concern, as Ms. Warner pointed out, is the concern of the inadequate infrastructure of Daybreak Drive. This property does not have access to Ballcamp Pike Shod Road.
And so the development further down Daybreak and further down Shod was allowed because it has access to Shod.
So this one was developed under a different plan, under the general plan.
Which one? Are you referring to the
This-
one 1 to 5?
Yes, she's answering, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then I guess following up on that concern about the road not being adequate for this adjustment, I feel like we hear cases all the time where roads are not adequate. And the sort of general MO is, well, the development comes and that brings the road improvement.
I think with the adoption of this new plan, staff is, now has the ability to take a different look at this. And so we're working really closely with Knox County Engineering and, because we have that new plan, infrastructure is supposed to be tied to development. And if the infrastructure is not there and it's not planned to be there, then our recommendation will be not to move forward with that rezoning.
Okay, I really appreciate you saying that, just that declaratively. That helps me, not just with this case, but also moving forward. So thank you for that. Thank you, Ms. Warner.
Anyone else?
So,
You want to go ahead? Okay, now we can move on to 16.
okay, so this next rezoning is to go from the planned residential zone of 4 dwelling units an acre to the PR zone at 4.3 dwelling units an acre. It's 4.99 acres, the west side of Byington Beaver Ridge Road, north of Byington Soloway Road. Last year, a rezoning request was submitted to go from RA to PR up to 5 dwelling units an acre. Staff recommended a lesser density at 4 dwelling units an acre with one condition to provide a landscape screen to the adjacent industrial property. And this was approved by County Commission in December of 2023. Staff did not support the maximum density allowed at the time due to concerns about the property's proximity to the industrial zone properties to the south and west. The comprehensive plan was adopted in April of this year, and the subject property was redesignated to the suburban residential. The suburban residential place type allows consideration of higher densities, higher than the 5 dwelling units an acre maximum under the previous low density residential. However, there have been no new infrastructure improvements or services in the area. There have been no changes in development pattern to warrant a reconsideration. The property has an existing single-family home along the front. PR up to 4 dwelling units an acre would allow 19 dwellings, while 4.3 dwelling units an acre would allow 21 units. An additional 2 units would not adversely affect the traffic or surrounding environment, but there is no need to increase the density when it's abutting an industrial zone property. So the recommendation will be to deny the PR zone up to 4.3 dwelling units an acre because the density is not warranted and there's been no change of conditions since the last rezoning request of last year.
Okay. Don't see any questions. Let's move on to agenda item number 20.
Okay, this request is for an 85-lot subdivision that will be accessed off of Bob Gray Road. Pellissippi Parkway borders to the east. This property is zoned planned residential with a density of up to 10 dwelling units an acre, subject to 4 conditions: providing a type C landscape buffer, providing a 35-foot peripheral boundary along the western and southern property lines, completing a traffic study, and providing a right-of-way stub out to Parkway Heights, the subdivision to the south, for a future connection to Blinken Street. This property is also within the technology overlay and was approved per staff recommendation by the Tennessee Technology Corridor Development Authority last night. The applicant is proposing to subdivide this 9.87 acre tract into 85 lots with attached houses. The development will be 8.6 dwelling units an acre. The proposed subdivision will have public and private streets. The public streets are shown with the red line. And they will be part of Road F and Road A in this subdivision. Road A at the very end shares a property line with Parkway Heights, the townhouse subdivision abutting to the south. Parkway Heights shows their Blinken Street connection right-of-way terminating at the shared property line, but the street is not yet built out. A temporary turnaround is being proposed until such time when the road is completed. The subdivision regulations require all dead-end streets to end with a cul-de-sac, so a variance is being requested for the end of Road A to terminate with a different design, which meets ASHTO standards. The right-of-way stub-out is a condition of this rezoning. TDOT has stated they would be in favor of closing the street connection to Pellissippi Parkway upon development of this property, and this will allow for better access for the subdivision to the south. The conditions of the rezoning also require a Type C landscape screen along the western and southern property lines. A Type B landscape screen is going to be along the western line, with keeping the type C along the south. Oh. And we're recommending approval, meeting all the zoning requirements.
Any questions, comments?
Sorry. About the, there's the connection to the north on this plan, or, sorry.
It's down here.
Trying
There's another townhouse subdivision.
Let me use road names, maybe that'll be easier.
Okay.
The development plan shows a connection to Bob Gray, correct?
Yeah.
And then also shows the connection to Blinken? Did I say it right? Blinken?
Yes.
And my question is about the terminus of, is it C Road? It's-
This is Road A.
Road D? I'm talking about the road that's kind of in the middle of this subdivision.
This one?
Yeah, and I don't have on my screen where that connects to, because there is a development that this is beside.
Yes, it will not be connecting to this. This would be the right of way.
That's the road that's going in.
No, this is the road that dead ends in the subdivision.
It's called Boynton Drive. It's part of, what is that, Highview Acres? Will not be connecting to that development.
I guess I'm just asking a question about our charge of connectivity and how to address that looking at a plan like this.
There was a condition of approval, if I remember correctly, not to connect to that particular development by county commission.
Is that right?
There's not a condition, but
There was an
There-
agreement not to. There's been a lot of conversations with the developer and the community about this particular development. And I don't know, Mr. Snowden, would you like to speak to this one? You've been in more conversations than I have been.
Yeah, Mike and Michelle and I, there was obviously the connection. We wanted to get access or take that access from Odin Street off of Pellissippi. There was concern that they didn't have sight distance originally on Bob Gray. They have it, but it is just just right at the minimums in both directions. We proposed that connection to that public street and actually went to a public hearing about it, where there were several county commissioners, and the general conversation was that nobody in that subdivision wanted that. So we kind of pivoted back to this because there was probably 100 people there, and not one of them was in support of it. So the general thought was to come back to this plan.
Thank you. If I remember correctly, when this plan came through before, it didn't have, they have completely reworked this access, so I am remembering that. And I think this plan is better, so I'm happy to see that. I guess my only comment, and this is really not on this case, but moving forward, is that our body have some opportunity to talk about connectivity and how we address that.
Yes, I think that that's something that we can hold a workshop on, or maybe include it as part of an agenda review. And it's definitely a conversation that we need to have in advance of the UDO process. I know, I remember you. Yes, yes. Mhm. We can have that conversation, yes. People have difference of opinion on what connectivity is and the value of it.
Just shoot me straight and tell me what it is.
Okay.
I'm gonna answer his question, even though I shouldn't. Just in the context of this, even though this is not, like, we have already left this, but it's something easy to point to. That the fact that this entire subdivision has no easy connectivity, I use the word, to the subdivision that is right beside it is problematic from the standpoint of persons needing to move between these two subdivisions, children needing to move, cars needing to move, without having to go all the way around, increasing drive time, increasing pollution, and decreasing how our community members are connected. But then to Commissioner Brooks' point, Director Brooks' point, the opposite side of that, and I think this is what Mr. Snowden encountered, is communities going, we don't know those people yet, and we don't know if we want to be connected to those people yet. So they're real, those are real things, and how do we, as a body charged with helping communities get cozy with connectivity, do that at these various parts of the process so it's not burdensome to developers, it's not scary for communities, and it helps everybody. That's how I would define it.
And there's negative connectivity such as cut-throughs, and Westwood had a negative connectivity where they tore down a bridge.
We just run into it all the time.
Okay, no more questions on this one. We'll move on to agenda item number 44, 9SC 24C.
This is in the city, and this proposal is for a 21-lot subdivision on 13.50 acres. This property is zoned RN1 with the hillside protection overlay. The RN1 zone requires a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. The proposed lot sizes range from approximately 10,000 square feet to 38,000 square feet. The public road Yosemite Trail will be continued and connected to Farnland Drive, connecting two neighborhoods. Road A is a new public road that dead ends with a cul-de-sac. The design speed will be 25 miles an hour along the road that will be connecting, 20 miles per hour along the cul-de-sac road. And there's a natural gas easement that runs through lots 6, 14, and 17 of the property. This may restrict some stormwater infrastructure and fences. The entirety of the property is within the hillside protection overlay, and the disturbance budget is 9.18 acres, and 7.24 acres are being disturbed, and this will be confirmed during permitting. Are there any questions?
This is a good example of one that we'll get a lot of we'll have a lot of conversation about connectivity, because the only way to reach this property is to connect through these existing subdivisions.
But there's no other options. I don't know, I'm mixed on it. I can see in the previous one, to have a right-of-way connectivity in case of emergency. To think out of the box on connectivity is, a lot of it is so that, let's say Bob Gray's all jammed up and there's an emergency in this subdivision. If we had a right-of-way between the two developments, a granted right-of-way so that emergency vehicles, doesn't have to be a road either. It just needs to be a way so that emergency vehicles could get to the development. I've thought about this a lot. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments about this one before we move on?
Is this lot going to be connected in both of those two, by both of those streets?
Yes, so it'll be connecting here. This is Yosemite. It's going to continue to connect with Farnland Drive. There's an intersection down here, was that cul-de-sac road. So it will be connecting these two neighborhoods.
And there'll be a subdivision plan that'll come before this body then, once the plan is created? Yeah?
Yeah,
There'll be a plan?
This is the concept. It doesn't require a development plan review.
I'm sorry, I see it
there's no
now. Okay.
It's just single-family lots. So that doesn't require a special use.
And does this adhere to the hillside protection or no, or does it not need to?
Yes. They have a disturbance budget of 9.18 acres. The plan shows that they will be disturbing 7.24, which is within their budget. And that'll be reviewed for compliance during permitting, so.
Okay, we will move on to Mr. Reynolds for the next two. We have agenda item number 22. This is a concept and development plan. This one's also generated a lot of public comments related to traffic considerations.
All right, I'll run through this one, the next one relatively quick, and if you have any questions, obviously just jump in and let me know. But so this is a Harvey Road subdivision. It's far west Knox County by North Shore Drive, and Loudoun County is adjacent to this property essentially. They're proposing 26 units at 1.9 dwelling units per acre. The property was rezoned to planned residential at 2 dwelling units per acre earlier this year. Part of this subdivision will access through the Oaks subdivision, which was developed in 2004 using a stub-out road. 9 lots will access directly from Harvey Road. The recommendation is to approve subject to 10 conditions. Just real quick, existing land uses out in the area. There are 2 developments that were, one development directly across North Shore that was approved recently, a small residential subdivision. And this larger property here was rezoned recently to planned residential as well, so I would expect something before too long on that to come forward. So you can see the planned residential zoning on the adjacent property to the east. This property is bisected by a creek, so the lots on Harvey Road, like I said, will have access directly to Harvey, and then the lots on the west side of the creek will access Crescent Oaks Lane as proposed. It is rural living on the future land use map. It does talk about single-family houses on varying lot sizes, and the rural living land use allows up to 2 dwelling units per acre. They are under the 2 dwelling units per acre. It is largely forested at this point. Just real quick from a street view standpoint, it kind of gives you an idea. Crescent Oaks Lane dead ends into this property, and then this is what Harvey Road looks like. This is why part of it is a collector road. Harvey is a collector, therefore all driveways must have a turnaround. But in this case, because of some of the vertical curve issues and such, we want to have shared driveways. So you'll see on the plan, every other lot shares a driveway, except for the last one, which has its own driveway, which you can see up here on the top of the plan. 2 lots that share a driveway, and the last one just has its own. I just want to highlight this one horizontal curve because they are asking for alternative design standard to reduce the horizontal curve from 250 feet to 125 feet. We're recommending approval of that. This kind of helps with the grading and try to keep lots out of the creek, which is running behind here. Like I said, we are recommending approval up to 10 dwellings, or subject to 10 conditions. As Director Brooks had mentioned, there is some opposition, particularly with accessing the existing neighborhood street, and then infrastructure in general on North Shore Drive with traffic and schools and such in that area. Any questions on this?
Okay, we will move on to the special use case, number 45.
Okay. So this is an expansion of an existing church. They're requesting 6,300 square foot addition on the front part of the property, which is on the plan shown as a proposed worship center. So the total square foot of the church in the end will be a little over 11,000 square feet. There's been a church on this site since at least the 60s. This is on Cedar Lane and Inskip kind of area between I-75 and Broadway. They are adding 20 parking spots to the rear of the property. This is to meet the minimum parking standard for the church. I'll show you an image in just a second, but it's largely just an open field or grassy area now with trees that line the street. It will continue to access the side street, Pinecrest Road, and not Cedar Lane, which is down at the bottom. Cedar Lane is at the bottom. Pinecrest is on the east side. That is a neighborhood, right, like a residential street. BZA approved a variance to reduce the front setback from 112 feet to 60 feet. So if you see the houses to the west, they are set back a little bit further. So we're recommending approval up to 2 conditions, or with 2 conditions. Just so you know, that this image here does not show windows facing Cedar Lane. I'm not sure where I got that one. Must have been an earlier image because I have a different one with windows in it. Existing land use in the area, you can see it's largely a single-family area. There is some multifamily across the road to the east, to the south, and then there is multifamily in the area. There's another church just to the west as well on Cedar Lane. Zoning is predominantly RN1 to the north, on the north side of Cedar Lane, and then it's kind of a mix of higher density residential to the south and west. And then the land use plan is predominantly low density residential with medium density. So this is the existing church. If you look at the plan view, there's like a split between the 2 existing structures. That's just a breezeway, so it's not 2 separate structures. Really, it's really one structure with a covered walkway between the 2. So this is where I was saying where the new parking will be located, kind of in this grassy area. There are existing trees along the roadside and the backside of the property, which you can see the existing trees here. They might have to still supplement those with more trees based on the city's zoning code. And as I mentioned, landscaping, since this is a non-residential use in a residential zone, a type A landscape buffer is required between the use and adjacent residential to the west and to the north. And parking lot perimeter landscaping will be required, at least at the new parking area, but they also intend to put it along the existing parking lot, and also landscaping will be required around the new building. Any questions? Just wanted to bring this up because there is opposition from the neighborhood on this, so I would anticipate being discussed.
Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Is there any other items that we haven't covered that you all wanted to talk about today? No? Okay. And thank you all. Finished a little bit early.